But that whole border quite like me. Because I've been singing your praises.
If everybody could please take a seat. Inoho. Kathy? Kathy, you just walked in the wrong direction. Councillor Spires. Kathy. Councillor Spires, please take your seat at the council table. Great. Okay, we'll make a start. Sorry for the delay today, folks. A mixture between things running over and a few technical hitches. But we're ready now for this long-term plan briefing of 12th of December. And I'll pass over to Mark and the team.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, everybody. Today we're going to be taking you through the rating system review. So at the moment we've only just finished the slide deck, so we're going to have to wing some of this. It's actually quite a long slide deck. I think there's about 160 slides to get you through, but some of them will be rapid fire. We'll just go through, show you the impacts on rateable properties in the district. So the team are currently loading your presentation for you on LG Hub. So in a few minutes you'll be able to follow us on screen. But I am supported today, obviously, by my fellow GMs. We've got our CFO, Jing, at the back, and Vicky Silk, my rates manager. So amongst all of us, we'll try and answer all your questions. So as always, please just ask questions as we go. If we could keep the questions on the slide that we're on, given there's 160, that would be really helpful, not going back and forward. And no doubt there may be some things that we have to park and move on, because ultimately what we want to do today is give you our recommendation and get sort of a steer from you as to how we progress going forward. So in terms of discussions today, so we're going to talk about, we're just going to quickly touch on what actually is a rating system review, what does that mean, what are the key principles that drive a rating system review. We have to take you through the district-wide revaluation, because that has an impact on our rating system. It's a key driver of what happens to the rates. So we do a quick overview, we show you the impact on rates. We have done an affordability study, so we'll talk to you about that. And then, of course, we've been beavering away behind the scenes, looking at various things of our current rating system that we propose to change, and later on we show you the goods and the bads of those proposed changes. And then we finish off with a proposal to finally, after many years of not actually increasing our water rates. So we'll talk to you about that. So, right, moving on. Okay, so what is a rating system review? So a rating system review is where we look at our rates, all the different rates that we charge. And we basically have a look, we take a step back, we look at it, and because our rating system, effectively what we do is we work with you and you decide how much rates revenue we need to collect. So that's the size of the pie, or it's the size of the cake. And the rating system is how we actually slice that cake or pie up. So when we do the review of the rating system, we just have a look at, are we slicing the cake up appropriately? Are they the right size? Are we actually charging the people that benefit the most from that rate? Should it be targeted? Should it be district-wide? Are we getting the mix right? Obviously, the rating system under legislation must be fair and equitable, and it must achieve a balance among the funding principles. The rating system must be transparent, so it must be available for the public to see and understand, and most importantly, it must be simple. So if you have a community that doesn't understand our rating system, you failed, effectively. It's part of the long-term plan consultation process. So under legislation, if you propose any changes to the rating system, you have to consult with the community. So if we get to the end of today and you do want to make some changes to the rating system, that has to be part and parcel of the consultation document. you must review your rating system. You must satisfy yourselves that it is fair and equitable. And once you've done all that, you can set a lawful rate. So the key principles when we do a rating system review, as I've said, a rating system must be equitable and affordable. The slide says to all ratepayers, and I think it's an important point. So when this council reviews its rating system, it must be equitable and affordable to its community. So it's irrelevant what happens to the rest of the country. It must be equitable and affordable to our community. It must be sustainable to all ratepayers. So we talk about our rating system being a bit regressive, and you could argue that it's not sustainable to our whole community. So we strive for sustainability to all ratepayers. It must be fully aligned with Council's strategic vision. In other words, the LTP has a strategic vision. You have a revenue and financing policy which allows you to charge rates, and those rates must be to effectively give effect to what you're planning to do and achieve the outcomes of your vision. And as I said before, the rating system must be really simple and easy to understand by the ratepayers. So in 2023, so every 3 years, as you know, we do a district-wide revaluation of all our properties. That's underway. We had an effective date of 1 August 2023. What that means is we actually took the values, so it's effectively the capital value of our rateable properties. You have to put a stake in the ground when you do a revaluation, and the 1st of August was when we put that stake in the ground. So the starter for 10 is those are the values of all our rateable properties. And when we do the valuation, effectively you're looking at the land value and the capital value of a rateable property. So property data updates is a constant process over 3 years. So the district-wide revaluation is done by quotable value. That's done every 3 years. But whenever there's a new property, a new rateable unit, or there's a renovation, that does change the value of properties. It's a constant process. So where there's been a change to a property, the value is updated over the 3 years. But the revaluation happens on the 1st of August 2023, and those new values take effect at the following rating year. So they'll take effect from 1 July 24. Now, the rating unit is determined by the Valuer General, and it's generally a property which has one title. Rates are set 1 July each year based on the rating unit as it is at the 1st of July. And I really like the bottom point. So changes in rating value or sections receiving title after 1 July become rateable from the following year. Okay, so you will be familiar with this as we presented this before, but I think for completeness. So what the table is showing is, so we've done. If I just go straight to the table, so we've looked at our rateable units by sector. So commercial rating units, lifestyle, other is utilities. You've got residential and rural. And what we've just done is we've just shown you what is the impact of the 2023 revaluations using the 23-24 rates revenue on the new valuation. So the first column is saying the 23-24 rates based on our current valuation. So commercial, we collect $11.8 million of rates from commercial, working down $92.1 million of residential, etc. So if we took the new valuations from the district-wide revaluation, which is still being finalised, we can show you using the current rates revenue requirement what would we collect from each of the sectors. And what it's effectively showing, so commercial goes from 11.8 to 12.3 because we've seen quite an uplift in capital value on commercial and lifestyle. Lifestyle goes up, other goes up slightly, residential actually goes down because you're not changing the size of the cake, you're actually changing the size of the slices, and rural goes up. So if we go all the way to the right hand side, I think the key point is, so if you didn't change the total amount that you collect in rates for 23-24 next year, and these valuations were final, and you did nothing else, based on a 12% rates increase, so apologies, this is based on 12%, not 17. But what it's showing is the impact of the revaluations would mean that the commercial sector as a whole would pay $420,000 more, lifestyle would pay $350,000 more, residential would pay $800,000 less, and that's because of the changes to your land value and capital value, and we'll take you through that in the next few slides. So the next slide is this is the residential rating units or dwelling movements. I won't go through everything, but at the very bottom, for residential rating units, your average capital value is $810,000. Your average land value is $451,000, and in terms of our residential sector, capital value on average has increased by 11.84%, and your land value has increased by 15.68%. So the important point, there's two key factors to that. So those increases are not as significant as the 2020 revaluation or 2021 revaluation, and land value has gone up more than capital value. So when we looked at the rating system review, we didn't want to do too much change to land value. If we put more rates that are being levied by land value, that's not good. And as I've said before, if you do nothing, if your change in capital value is higher than the average, the chances are you'd be paying more rates. If the increase is less than the average, chances are you'd be paying less. But it just depends on what you're also doing with your rates revenue requirement. And you can see the outliers. So Hautere Waikanae Rural has got a higher capital value change than the average. So that just breaks it down by area for you. So key points for the residential sector. So the peak of the market in the Kapiti Coast district was in December 21. The average property value was just over $1 million. Since January 2022, the residential property market, just like everywhere else in the country, has fallen until May 2023, where we started to see a slight uplift. So in the 3 months from May 23 to August 23, the market has shown signs of stabilisation, meaning it's not falling, it's either holding or it's starting to lift. And as you've seen, average capital value for the residential rating units is $810,000 and average land value $451,000. So with commercial, so sort of same table. Probably I'll direct you just to the bottom of the table. I don't think my pointer's working. Oh, there we go. So just direct you down to there. Those are I guess that's the headline news. So here we're showing both commercial and industrial. So commercial has had a 13.9% capital value change. Land value 19.8, so higher than what's happened to the residential sector. And this is done by independent valuers that take into account, I think in terms of industrial, they look at many factors, size, location, and commercial is also, I think it's based on rentals and yields. But this basically breaks it down by area. And then industrial, which is significant. Industrial has seen a 40.7% increase in capital value, and for land value is 48.1%, and that's mainly up in Otaki, and it's because of the scarcity of industrial property and the attractiveness of the expressway, increased access. So that's a table that you can peruse in your leisure, but it just breaks it down by area within the Kapiti district. So some key points. So as I've said, so demand for industrial properties has grown, especially in Otaki, with completion of Transmission Gully and Peka Peka to Otaki Expressway. And the industrial properties have seen the biggest increase, but they are coming from a pretty low base as a starting position. So they've just done a massive catch-up. So this table, this table is just showing the impact of the value. So I guess we just wanted to see, what is the impact of the 23 valuation on all properties? So that's the commercial, the lifestyle, the rural, the residential. And so we're going to see quite a lot of these charts going forward. This is effectively, it's the distribution or the bell curve. And you can see in front of you, you can see that, look, there's kind of an even distribution. You've had some properties that have gone up, some properties that have actually gone down. We'd expect some properties to go down, particularly if their capital value is lower than the average, and we'd expect properties to go up if their capital value is higher. But for the most part, obviously, there's a number of properties that are sitting on, that says a 0% rates increase, and then if you go to the right, some properties are seeing up to 10% rates increase, and the other way, some properties are seeing up to 10% decrease. So that's just all that chart is showing you is if we kept the 23-24 rates revenue number the same, and we rate it exactly the same way on the new valuations, this would be the impact on the property. So that's quite a balanced distribution curve. But you do have some outliers going all the way up to more than 50%. So, we do have some properties in the district with massive capital values. They've had a capital value increase, and so there would be a rates increase. Okay. I keep clicking, but my laptop's not clicking with me. There we go. So we've done that.
Yeah, so the next one's just by area.
Yeah, and this is just the 23-24 standard. Okay, so there's about probably 30 slides to take you through, which I'm going to race through because these slides are just showing you the impact of the revaluation by sector, by area. What we really need to get to is the changes to the rating system and how that impacts. But what this is showing you, so this is just showing you Ōtaki. So this is the distribution curve. If you did nothing else, what would happen to the properties in Ōtaki? So that says all properties, so that's all the sectors. And we can see from there that most properties are going, I can't even see that, are going between a 2 to 4% uplift. They would have a 2 to 4% rates increase. That's the majority of them, but you're always going to get outliers either way. So again, if we looked at that distribution curve, it's leaning more to the right, which means that more properties are going to be paying more. And we'd expect that. We'd expect that from Ōtaki because, again, they're starting from a low base, the capital value is going up, and you've got the huge increase to the industrial sector because this is all properties. But don't worry, we break it down by sector, and this is shown by area. Might just be easier if I look on the screen too. So that was for Ōtaki. Waikanae, it's a slightly slimmer bell curve. That's just showing the number of properties that would experience rates increases by the category at the bottom. So look, most of them there, I think it's -2 to 0. So Waikanae didn't have such a big capital value increase, including the Waikanae garden area. So it was mainly Ōtaki that had the biggest increase. So you've got quite a strong distribution curve to the left. So you've actually got quite a few properties in Waikanae that are paying less. And then again, you do have a tailing out to the right because there's obviously some large capital value properties. So that's Waikanae. Pretty much similar for Raumati. You've got a distribution curve that's centred more to the left, which means more properties would actually pay left if we change nothing. Paraparaumu, I'm calling that more Paraparaumu as a shift more to the left. And just stop me, I'll just keep going until you ask a question. So Paikakariki, most of the properties are between 2 and 4%, and that's probably the land value that's driving it, and we know the reasons for the land value. And again, I'd probably say you've got an equal, it's probably leaning more to the left than to the right. So, but most properties would be 2 to 4.
So I have a question, if I may.
Yeah.
If we just go back to the Paikokoriki one.
Yep.
So in here, it says that there's a change of about 25%, whereas that's not really indicative on that. So if you go by that residential dwelling movements,
Yeah.
you'd expect there to be a effect on. You'd expect it to show on this graph here.
And this is all properties. This isn't, so the slide on page 7 is just your residential sector. This is combining the whole lot. This is the rural, the lifestyle.
In Paikokoriki.
In Paikokoriki,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, and so the same applies to those other ones for Waikanai and for Otaki.
It's all the sectors. It's your
Right,
utilities.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because some of those actually have some large,
Yeah.
massive changes.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah. So those graphs aren't somewhere else that if we wanted to look at, we could see them? Well, they- So I do have the graphs by sector as well, by area.
Okay.
It's just because there was such
Yep.
a large number
No, I
of graphs.
understand that.
And probably the other point is an increase in capital value doesn't result in the same increase in rates. It's that comparison to the average and how that.
Yep, I understand. Do
Thank
you
you.
want those more detailed graphs?
Yes, if that's okay,
Can they be
please.
chucked in the hub somewhere?
Yep, thank you,
In a
thank you.
separate- Maybe in a separate folder?
Yep,
Yeah.
thank
That'd be
you.
good. Thanks, Jocelyn.
Okay, so continuing on slide 17. So just
Sorry,
Sorry,
yeah.
Mark, just, and I might be a bit of ahead of it here, but your dream scenario of a third, where's this sitting in that at the moment?
we've got that coming up.
Cool.
Yeah. But my dream of a third is eroding away fast.
Hold on to that dream, Mark. Okay, carrying on.
So slide 17. So just a quick overview of where we're at in terms of the revaluation objection process. So we've provided a week or two more than the statutory limit. Objections close on Thursday, the 14th of December. So far, there's been 179 objections received as at the 7th of December. Most of them are coming in from residential, which is typical. It's what we would expect. But we have seen some from lifestyle, a few from commercial, rural, and utility. Just by comparison, we received 376 for the last revaluation that we did in 2020. And there were 526 objections in 2017. And just from memory, I think 2017 was when there was the impacts of the Mackay's crossing to Peka Peka, that expressway, the impacts of that came through, and there was a substantial increase in property values. But as the slide says, the last bullet point, objections get reviewed between December and May, and then they finalise and they take effect from 1 July 24. Okay, so that just completes. It was a very quick run through of the objection process, but it's underway, and that's the impact that it has if we change nothing. So as part of the long-term plan, look, we always do an affordability study.
So I'm just trying to understand what you just said. Is the objection process underway?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. How far are we into it?
We've got 2 days left to go, and then the objections close, and then the objections are then worked through by quotable value.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. Thank you.
Sorry, my question relates to the definition of properties. So, today's a question which you might not have the answer to, but I'd be interested to find out what it is. How many properties in capita are rentals? That's outside the commercial sector. So, because anecdotally we know that number is increasing significantly. And in the case that they are rentals, they are effectively commercial properties from the point of view of the owner of the property, but probably not from us, and we don't have a commercial differential. So I'd like to suggest that we visit that at some stage. Liz hates me saying that, but anyway.
Your rent will go up.
Yeah. So with a commercial properties, when you're rating commercially, those rates are a tax deductible expense for that commercial entity, right? So at some stage, if we don't have it now, it would be really interesting to know what those numbers are. But nobody needs to do a PhD on it.
So I guess my response, but whether a property is rented out is not something that is captured within the rating system. So yeah, it would be quite tricky to identify that other than from other sources. I guess the only, and this is just a historical thing that I recall, when water metering first started, we did try to identify what properties that potentially were rental just by differences in postal versus location and address. Didn't go down very well with owners. So yeah, whether there's another mechanism to do that, yeah, with potential.
The reason I raise that is, let's say 40% of properties are rentals, and I think that's about an average, right? So 40% of properties are rentals. They're commercial properties. Those the people who own those properties that are renting them out are doing so in a commercial sense. They have the tax deductibility. The new government have introduced legislation which is going to save that sector about $1.2 billion a year, which is one of the reasons they presumably contributed $12 million to their campaigns. So rating impacts on those properties is significantly different than the rating impact on Mr. and Mrs. Smith down the road. Who are, it's a non-commercial entity and nothing. It's the difference between being self-employed and you take a lot of your expenses out of your gross income, as opposed to the person who's on wage and salary and everything they pay for comes out of their net. So again, at some stage, because that's the trend, isn't it, in this country, we're moving increasingly towards rental as opposed to property ownership. So.
I don't know if we want to get bogged down into that. We've got Bede.
That was my concern in asking, Mayor, and I agree. I probably don't want to, but just in terms of the designation, so whether a property is designated commercial or residential is based on what, the district plan?
It's actually based on valuation rules. So as part of the process that quotable value go through whenever they're valuing a property, is there certain rules that determine the highest and best use of that property, and that's the categories that we use to identify commercial properties.
So
versus residential, etc.
Right, so the actual rate charged is not based on how it's being used, but how that designation
But
states
that
it.
designation should be identify the highest and best use of that particular property, and
Right.
it does get reviewed, regularly. Certainly every three years at a minimum. But if anything else changes, an owner chooses to go through a resource consent process to change how that property is using, that would then be picked up and incorporated within the rating system as well.
Right, so if somebody was currently running a property as a rental property, but then they sold it to somebody who lived in it.
Mm-hmm.
They-
So being a rental property is not considered commercial
Right.
use from,
Yeah.
it's
So-
still a residential
Right.
property regardless of how the owner chooses to use.
I'm not quite getting the conversation the way I'm going, but I'll leave it there. Sir Nigel's wrong.
Liz, do you have something to contribute which would not
Yeah, just.
bog us in the mire? No, Liz is next.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were looking for a point of clarification, but she's going to dig a
I
great
wanna
big hole
speak
and fill it full of mud. But carry on.
I want was speaking
Luckily,
to-
your microphone wasn't on, Councillor Wilson. I hope the next microphone on didn't catch that. Liz?
I want to speak in defence of landlords, seeing I am one. You know, the whole reason we've got a reversal of policies on interest deductibility, etc., is because tenants have suffered. You know, because there's been a shortage of rental properties and rents have gone up and it's all skewed the market. So the imposing more tax on landlords just...
I think we are getting slightly sidetracked
All right.
onto a different topic, but thanks for that comment. Nigel, do you have something that's relevant to this slide? Sorry to cut you off, Liz.
Yeah, only to say nobody's talking about putting more tax on landlords. What I'm saying is that the
Sorry,
government
Nigel,
have
you're in the
reduced
same- I
taxes.
think you're in the
on-
same bog
Yeah.
that Liz was.
No, just to the point of where increasingly around the world, and it will happen here, and it's happening here already, is that the rental market is being corporatised, and that's just true all around the world.
How does that impact on our rates?
Well, because the owners, increasingly the owners of the properties, of residential properties, are corporations. In America, there are entire towns that are owned
Okay,
by corporations.
we're going to
So
get
the
back on
rates-
track.
So what
We're
I'm
gonna
saying is
carry on
that
with the slides.
the rating, when we're looking at a review of rating, about the possibility of commercialising
Okay.
residential rates that are rentals.
I
Well, I'm
don't
just
thi-
saying,
I
it's a discussion.
don't think we can do that under the legislation, would I be right?
No, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
we just
so
can't do it at the moment.
a little bit of a moot point right now. Maybe something to write to the Minister about, Councillor Wilson. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thanks, Mark.
Slide. So affordability study. So as I said earlier, so part and parcel of an LTP and a rating system review is to do an affordability study. As I said, the rating system must be, as much as practically as possible, it must be equitable and affordable for our community. So it makes sense that we just do an affordability study. So we have done an affordability study. We commissioned Infometrics to do that for us. And it's good practice when you do a long-term plan. So what the affordability study is, it looks at what is the rates as a percentage of household income across the district, broken down to area, unit and mesh block level. So mesh block level is the properties on a street, so you can go right down to the detail. Mesh blocks have varying populations and are the lowest level that we can obtain income data from Stats New Zealand. Area units are sorted from least affordable to most affordable. And as I said, that's taking your mean rates as a percentage of your mean household income. So effectively, we were saying was what percentage of rates? Sorry, how much of what percentage of your household income is spent on rates? So when we talk about this, when we do this affordability study, we're looking at all our rates. So we're looking at this council's rates, Greater Wellington's rates, as well as our water rates. So it's basically what is the total rates that that household has to pay, including GST, because that's what they've got to pay. So the property rates data is based on the 23-24 rates and the 22-23 water rates data. So it's complete. We're in 23-24. We've got fixed charges for water rates. We've got variable charges for 23. We've got variable charges, and we haven't completed the 23-24 year. So the data isn't available. So that's why they have to look back 1 year for the water rates. The rates are also before any central government rebates or any remissions that this council has provided. So it's a little bit crude. It's not factoring in everything, and it's using data from the past. And the income is from 2022 census and is not adjusted. So it's at a point in time. It's to give us a gauge. So David Shand is the chair of our Risk and Assurance Committee, and he actually did a report in 2007 called the Shand Report, and we've been using this for years. But basically, a yardstick for us is that an affordability level is that rates shouldn't be more than 5% of your household income, and it's what this council has used for many years as a starting point or a guiding principle. So what the table shows you is it's basically breaking down, this isn't by mesh block, but it's by area, and it's basically showing what is the total rates for that area, how many properties are in that area, what are the mean rates, what's the mean household income, and what are the rates as a percentage of your mean household income. So we can see from the table going through the district that your mean rates in the district is $4,734, and your mean household income is just over $100,000. And so the in terms of rates as a percentage of mean household income is 4.7%. And then it's broken down. So what's actually interesting here is we've got 3 areas that are above 5%. So those are areas that we were concerned about, but we weren't too concerned because they weren't astronomically above 5%. And I think the last time we did this 3 years ago, I think we had 8 areas that were well above 5%. So
If I can make a comment about that.
Yep.
So obviously the top 2 are Waikanae. If you look at Waikanae Beach, total number of properties is basically, well, it's second to highest. It's just only the second to highest. So it actually impacts an awful lot of people.
Yep.
An awful lot of people. And Waikanae, then you look at Waikanae Park. So basically Waikanae is copping this.
well,
I said they're copping it.
Well, this is just gives us a
Yep.
bit of a guide.
Yep.
And so we've got another slide where we just go into a little bit more detail to give you a little bit more information. So if we start on the left, so we've got 3 areas that are enough. You know, you have to remember that the Shand report was done in 2007. We're going into 2024, and so 5% is a reference point, really. I mean, our costs have gone up astronomically. But in terms of, if we had a look at Waikanae West, we can see, we can try and understand. So they're 5.4. Rates are on average 5.4% of the household income, and you have to kind of look at the factors. So it's just saying that your sorry, I can't even see it on the screen, but you might see it in front of you. But it's breaking down in those 3 areas. What is the household income for that area, and what are the rates for that area? So compared to the mean for the district, and they're not too far from the mean, but it does push them up. So 5.4 is not too far away from 5. You've got 5.3 and 5.2. So yes, they're over 5, but not by much. And that is a 2007 affordability metric. So in general, what we've taken from that is the fact that everyone is roughly 5% or low is actually a good result compared to where we were 3 years ago. So conclusions from the rates affordability information. Yep, we've got 3 areas where it's above 5%, so it is a concern, but it's not a huge concern because they're not a long way over. And this is before any rebates or remissions have been applied. So you may find in those areas they are actually benefiting from the central government rebate and our remissions, our rates assistance remissions. Just some facts and numbers. Over 2,500 households received the government rates rebate in 22-23. So far this year, 1,600 properties have received the central government rebate, and the maximum rebate that you can have at the moment is $750 per household. We also have our own rates assistance remission. This is where we give up to $300 rates assistant. On average, it's $240. It's on a scale, so it depends on your criteria. You can get up to 300. On average, we give 240, and there's 1,300 of those were granted in 22-23. So it's just another tool that the council has in the toolbox to provide rates relief. And we can improve the affordability issue using government rebates and our rates assistance remission, but we can't eradicate it. So you may have some of those households in those areas may well be below 5%. So that's
So I've
good
got a
news.
couple of questions. Mark, is that a good time to pause? Thanks for putting your mic on and waiting, Martin.
Just one's observation, one's just a query actually. First of all, interesting around the rate rebates because that's about 12% of the population getting a rates rebate, which is. But I'm just curious. When Waikanae, just coming back to this. Oh, sorry, there's no page number here. The one with the affordability results on it. The Waikanae Beach has 9,900 the top end of the rates, 10,640, I think it is. I'm just curious to know why that is. Is that because of a targeted rate, or is there any reason why those numbers are sort of quite a lot higher than the rest of the district? Oh, it's the total rates. Per household, is that right? Top end? Sorry, I must have obviously missed
Yeah,
it.
I think you're right, Councillor. So the far left column is just the total amount of rates collected from Waikanae Beach, but third column does give you the mean rates.
My apologies. I thought it was a. Yeah.
The
Okay. No.
third column.
That makes sense. That's cool. Thank you.
Just a question, Mark, on that, the Shan report says 5% income affordability threshold. That mean rates, that's all the properties added together divided by the amount of properties, right? So there'll be some properties that are not worthless, but really low. And then you've got a lot of properties that are higher. So there's going to be a truckload of properties within that spectrum that are well over 5%. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we know how high the higher ones are? And is that a good way of representing it? Maybe, I don't know. Is there a different way of representing it to give a better picture of the 5% affordability spectrum? Yeah, my house. I'm close to 7,000. I'm in the it's got 4.8 sort of median for me, so I'm close to 2,000 over that. Just as an example. Yeah, and I was just interested. It'd be interesting to see the outliers, I guess.
Yeah, we can come back to you on that. I mean, I guess what we're presenting is the median, but obviously the information report has
Doesn't
the
represent
outliers.
the outliers.
Yes, yeah.
Because there might be a truckload of outliers, eh?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Look, I think just the gauge is we do look at affordability is the rates as percentage of median household income, and it's a gauge. It's just a gauge.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think, look, that concludes. I guess that's just a little introduction. So now we're into the business end, the review of the rating system. We'll take you
Jocelyn,
through
do
the
you have a
options.
question?
Yeah. So the heading of today's session is the long-term plan 2024 to 2034.
Yeah.
So does that, what does that actually mean in terms of this rating system and I suppose the rest of the long-term plan that we're actually considering at this point in time?
So the next long-term plan will have a period of 10 years. So it'll make up 10 years. So you'll have prospective financial statements for 10 years. It's what we're planning to do for 10 years. It's all the capital projects for 10 years. Financial strategy is 20 years. The infrastructure is 30 years. Under legislation, your long-term plan must cover 10 years. So we're going back to that. Your rating system that you adopt would be, in essence, for the following 10 years. But you can do a rating system review at any point in time, and in 3 years' time, you'll be doing a new long-term plan where you'll do another rating system review. So it is effectively fixing the rating system for 10 years, but there are subsequent opportunities to change that.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, and also presumably the rating system that you set can be is predicated on other instruments that get used. So say for instance we decided to fairly charge developers a contribution that represents value to the community, and that substantially increased council's revenue, so it took care of a fair chunk of the pie, and so therefore your rating system might be based around that, or you set your rating system and then you can each year look. So you set the ratings. You would have to set the rating system presumably independent of these other potential mechanisms, right?
Yes, councillor. So first of all, the council has a policy called a revenue and financing policy, which effectively defines what you fund publicly through rates and what you fund privately through fees and charges. So it enables you to charge rates. Then your funding impact statement rating policy is your lawful way of setting rates. To go back further, so the rating system, all the rating system does is it allows you to set rates, and it's how you slice up the cake. Rates are funding OPEX. So when we look at what the rates revenue requirement is, we work with yourselves, we determine the budgets, we look at the levels of service and what you want to do, and that's OPEX. And so the first thing we look at OPEX is what revenue streams are funding the OPEX, and the difference is funded by rates. When we look at your capital works program, we look at external grants from NZTA, Waka Kotahi, and the development contributions come into that because they fund CapEx, and the difference is through debt, and debt drives rates as well. So next slide, the pie. So this is so what we're showing on this is the dream to have a fair and equitable rating system in Kapiti, because we have a land value rates, we have capital value rates, we have fixed charges, and we have variable rates. But what's generally seen to be non-regressive and fair and equitable is a third. Yes, we have variable rates, but that sort of comes out. So ideally, we'd like to get a third capital value, a third land value, and a third by way of fixed charge. On the right-hand side, it's just showing where we're currently at. So for the current financial year, 23-24, with our rating system, we're deriving in blue 42% of the total rates revenue is coming by way of fixed charges, 37 is land value, and 16 is capital value, and 5% is through the variable. So that's where we're at. And so when we at the start of our rating system review, of course we're trying to achieve a third. So where we're really out of balance is on the fixed charge. So we had a look at the fixed charges and looked at, is there anything we can do to bring 42 back to 30%, and obviously the land value, could we bring that, and could we increase the size of the green pie, which is the capital value. So that kind of was our first sort of guide as to what we wanted to have a look at. But that's where we're currently at, 42, 37 and 16. So we I think we presented some options to you, I think right at the beginning, and we've got a little steer to go away and look at a couple of things. So we're going to report back some options to you today. So of course an option is to do nothing, status quo, leave it as it is. The rates revenue requirement has gone up substantially. I think it's 12 million. So we're sitting at a $12 million increase in the rates revenue from 23-24 to 24-25. So of course an option is to do nothing. The second thing we looked at was to introduce a climate action target rate based on capital value. So I just showed you that. So the smallest pie there is 16%. So we wanted to look at, can we somehow increase the capital value and decrease the land value and fixed charges? So we looked at the climate action target rate. The third option is we had a look at what is driving this 42% fixed charge, because you would look at that and say we've got a highly regressive rating system. So your lower capital value properties in Otaki are paying the same fixed charges as your higher capital value properties elsewhere in the district. So we wanted to look at, so we looked at, so what we saw is that the community facilities rate was a very high fixed charge. So we wanted to model and look at what would be the impact if we moved that to capital value. So that's option 3. And then option 4 was the kicker, where we said, well, what if we actually combined option 2 and 3? So if we introduced a climate action target rate, the capital value, and we shifted the community facilities rate from fixed to capital value, what would that total impact be on the rating system? So we'll take you through these options.
Yep.
Just a question. Yeah, so have you factored into the options, because there's zero chance of me being able to read those, sorry. The people who are asset rich and cash poor,
No.
so that's just not factored in at all.
No, I mean, look, the rating system is a blunt. It's a blunt instrument. Capital value is widely regarded as an ability to pay, but it ignores the fact that you could be asset rich, cash poor.
Yeah, because we do know, as a matter of fact, that happens for a lot of people. So given that you have been to the mountaintop, you're going to recommend an option?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we'll. When would you like to break? 10 to 3. Okay. Oh, there's a question.
Sorry, thanks, Mark.
Lawrence.
Can I just ask a question? The option 2, the climate action target rate, where did that surface from as an idea, concept? Last triennium? Sorry, I'll let Mark answer the question. Sorry.
So Mark can answer.
Yeah. So look, it was tabled in the last triennium, but we simply didn't have time to put it in. So it was at that presentation that we did back in, back in October, November. We did have a follow-up question. Could we at least consider it? Because Auckland have one, and a lot of councils are going that way as well. So we said we would look at it and bring it back to the table.
Can we have Lawrence's microphone back, please? Thank you.
So my understanding then, if we have a targeted rate, that money that comes in is spent solely on climate action?
Yes. Yes, that's
We're
right.
getting nods.
Yeah. Yeah, there's quite a bit to discuss about that, but
Yeah, I'd like
yes,
to have that
yes.
conversation, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's the idea of it, isn't it? Jocelyn? Oh no, Nigel. and
Well,
then
no,
Jocelyn.
just very quickly. That rate that you're talking about, what was the expected revenue from that? The climate.
Sorry, we all the modelling was done on 500k plus GST. Actually transferring from the current district-wide general rate, which is where it's essentially included to its
So it's
own.
effectively 0.5%.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so the other thing too is, because this has been sort of, there's been some discussion out there. So if you weren't calling it that, it's not like you wouldn't be rating that amount, right? You'd just be rating it under another name.
That's
So
right.
it's not
Yeah.
extra rates.
No, it's not an extra rate. It's just
Despite
got
what
a
we've
different
heard in the
name.
last couple of days, it's not extra rates on top of. Is everybody hearing that? It's not extra rates on top of the rates we're already charging. It's just a different way to slice the pie. Has everybody heard that? Are we all understanding that? Thank you. Jocelyn?
Yeah, thank you. So my question was probably along a similar line to Councillor Kirby. I think before we go too much further down the track, we actually really need to know how that money is going to be spent in terms of, you were talking about the climate action targeted rate, because to me in there's actually a whole lot of environmental stuff too, which would be of, I suppose it would be part of that synergy as well. And so actually understanding and presenting it to us, but also when it goes out for consultation, is really, really important, because people, if they don't understand it, they aren't going to like it, or potentially aren't.
The Chief Executive's going to make a comment. We have Darren's. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Your Worship. Look, really good discussion. It's currently we collect a rate and we spend a portion of that in the climate space. So what we're if it's $500,000, it's $500,000. We're not suggesting we rate any higher to gather anything different to what we currently are, and it will be spent the same as it currently is. So nothing changes. It's just that we will give it a label if that's what you want to do.
And I think the idea behind giving it a label is to protect it and to say and to identify it.
We declared a climate emergency.
I think by giving it a label, it probably needs to have an explanation as well. In fact, I'm pretty certain it does.
So are we giving a steer yet? Because we could debate that whether we want this or not. Have we got all the information yet, though, or can we have some more slides?
You can have some more slides on it.
I think we'll have a few more slides and just get a bit more information and then have a good old chat about how we want to move forward, potentially.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So we certainly can bring some more slides around the 500,000. We can do that on Thursday. How we've approached this, as we've heard from the Chief Executive, all we're proposing is to take what we would otherwise have in the district-wide general, take some of it out and put it into a new rate, and you crawl, walk, run. So you start slowly, exactly like we did with the commercial rate. So you put some of the economic development budget onto commercial rate, and over subsequent years you increased it a little bit more once you were satisfied that the commercial sector was paying for the parts of the economic development that benefited the commercial sector. So this is the same proposal. So we've got budgets throughout the entire business that have climate reduction initiatives, and so we've ring-fenced one small part, $500,000, which we can tell you what it is and we can tell you what it'll be spent on. If we were going to assign everything we do to climate change, it would be a lot higher than 500,000. So a lot of that is still sitting in the district-wide general, but we can bring that back on Thursday. So slide 24. So it's the status quo rating system. So this is the difference between 23-24 versus 24-25. This is, we've got 12 or 13, I think we've got 13 different types of rates in front of you on this page. Appreciate it's not that clear. It's a lot of information to put on a change, but these are just your rates. And this is by percentage as well. And so you can see, so I'll just read through the first line. You've got the general rate. We currently collect $37 million through our district-wide general rate. If you change nothing, next year you'll be collecting $41.6 million. As a percentage, it stays at 35% of your total rates collected. And it just goes through that line by line. And what you can see, even though we've gone up $12 million, the percentages haven't actually climbed dramatically at all. I do just want to highlight the commercial rate as I am anticipating the question. So the commercial targeted rate, we currently rate $758,000 on the commercial rate at the moment. The intention would be to rate 947, so that's 192,000. I think it's just under $200,000 increase. We have included another $1.4 million in the budget for economic development, so that increase represents 14% of the 1.4. So not a lot going on to the commercial sector. So that's status quo.
Sorry, Mark, just because you have got economic development as a separate thing.
Yeah.
So the talk that involves us saying to Wellington NZ thanks but no thanks, but that's currently rated by GW.
Yes.
But we say we still want that money because we think it can be well spent in our community. So if we were to rate that, so basically to the ratepayer it's a neutral situation, you're just transferring it instead of ratepayers paying it on their regional rate, they're paying it here. So when the regional council are rating for that, I'm assuming they're rating that across every ratepayer. There's no differential because they do have a differential for commercial rating. So, so I'm not quite sure if that is the situation, because otherwise what would happen is we would then be putting a disproportionate impost on residential ratepayers. So something to check out. But just my own personal view, I wouldn't like to see that, given if we go down that track, that just goes into that commercial rate, because this is a separate thing. Otherwise,
Yep.
what happens is people will be very suspicious it's just going to disappear into.
Yeah,
As opposed to
I'll
having
give part of the
targeted
response.
spending.
I know Vicky wants to respond. So we have to make sure that the rating system is fair and equitable, and we need to make sure what we put on the commercial sector is generally benefiting the commercial sector. So it wouldn't simply be put into the commercial rate, it would be shared. But at the moment, it's not even part of our rates.
So the way Greater Wellington recover, they essentially rate residential and rural properties the same. It's just a flat fixed charge that applies to those types of properties, and business type rates is a rate based on capital value. So I guess the difficulty for us is knowing that how Greater Wellington are essentially dividing up that pie. Are they, and the potential impact that might have should that essentially transfer back to Kapiti. Potentially there would, I'm assuming there would be an impact, because if they're just taking their total rates requirement and then dividing it up right across the Wellington district in the same way, then without knowing how much are they sharing, between each of the different areas.
No, they take a certain amount from each area, is my understanding. So.
Yeah, and it's prorated based on proximity to Wellington, actually, is one of the things, and population. So, but they get from Kapiti ratepayers about $550,000 a year. So if we just said to Greater Wellington, please stop rating for that, we'll do that. And then it's about my question was around about the mechanism that it's still going to be a fair system. And a relatively simple one, is it?
I think we need to dig into that a little bit. We're going to have that conversation, but good to raise it.
So just moving to the next slide, and we'll break in 7 minutes. So this is status quo. So what we've done is it's important to realise that properties in our district will have new valuations from 1 July 24. So all our analysis is done on the new valued amount. So we know that there's a couple more objections that are going through, and they've got till Thursday, and they get processed and finalised in May. But basically, this is when we talk about new valuations, it's the audited amounts. Still subject to change. So if we applied the current year's rates to the new valuations, that's what you by sector. That's what you have on the left-hand side. 12.2 commercial, 9 lifestyle, etc. going down. And then we've picked up the 24-25 draft rates increase of 12%, that rates revenue, applied it to the new valuations and broken it down by sector. So we'll just talk to the residential, but obviously the slide is showing all the sectors. So residential will go from 91 to 99 million. The share of the total rates take actually goes from 79.4 goes down to 79.3. So we are increasing the rates revenue requirement by 12 million. 8 million of that comes from residential, and we know that. We know that from our rating system, that we know that we're reliant on 73% of our total income is on rates, and our biggest sector in the Kapiti district is residential. So residential will be paying $8 million more of the increase in the rates revenue. In terms of the effect that the valuation has had, commercial pay 1.1 more, lifestyle pay 960 more. So that's if we did status quo. And then we've got the bell curves, we've got the bell charts. So this is if you did nothing, most properties, as you'd expect, on the new valuations would be between 8 to 10% rates increase. There are some between 10 to 12, and a couple would be below. This is the impact on commercial. This is how the shift. Commercial We know that commercial has, we're getting there's $1.1 million extra being applied to commercial, and so we'd expect to see that. So a majority of our commercial are paying 8 to 10% rates increase, some 10 to 12. Residential is what we'd expect. We would be putting $8 million extra rates on our residential sector, and so they'd be between 6 and 12%. Our lifestyle has gone up as well. I think lifestyle was 960,000, and so that pushes them 10 to 12. Rural 10 to 12. So this is sort of what we would expect based on the new values, and then we can break it down by area. So Otaki, this is all properties. Most of the properties in Otaki are sitting between 8 to 10. Commercial, residential, lifestyle 10 to 12, rural, some below 2, mainly 10 to 12, Waikanae 8 to 10. This is for all properties in Waikanae, and then broken down by sector. So your commercial is really between 6 and 12, as where most properties would be sitting. Residential really between 8 and 12. Lifestyle mainly 10 to 12. So if we did nothing, most properties are between 8 to 12% is what we'd expect based on the new valuations.
So, Mark, those numbers are predicated on 12%. Realistically, we're looking at 17. So will the proportions stay the same? Like for the extra 5, or is the extra 5, will the imposts be weighted somewhere else?
It really depends on where that extra 5 is distributed across the different rating categories, essentially. So I don't know the answer to that.
So we wouldn't just go, it's a pie. We'll go, this is a specific piece of the pie. This is for depreciation. So therefore, you would put that in your target rate somewhere?
Potentially, yeah, because yes, off the top of my head, yeah.
So without having the chance to model 17%, so we know that extra 5 is going on the Three Waters, and so we think it would be it would look pretty much the same plus 5%.
So, if you live in Tūhoro and you don't get any water or those services, would you still be, would this be across everybody, or would it just be across those who are receiving the full value of the Three Waters?
So as long as that extra rates requirement is only on the Three Waters rating categories, then yes, the properties that aren't charged those particular rates, obviously.
Yeah. And so I don't know how many of those there are or what proportion they are, but then it starts to make 17% look like 19% for some and 13% for some. Do you know what I mean? I'm not quite sure because I don't know what the balance of the numbers is, but it could be that people could be getting a really ugly number, couldn't they? Yeah.
Okay, so just flying through. So this is status quo. So it's really a repeat, just broken down. So just about everyone is between 8 to 12 for status quo. So I'll really just fly through. But if you see something that you want to know, please just stop me. So we're in Raumati, Paraparaumu, and Paikakariki. Okay, so that's option 1. So option 2 starts to change things up quite a little bit.
I think we'll pause there. The reason I'm pausing at 10 to 3 is that we have a clash in our calendars. We actually have a CPIC meeting that's due to start now. So what I'm going to do, everybody else is just observing. For the members of CPIC, I'm just going to open that meeting, which is me, Liz, Sophie and Lawrence. I declare the meeting of CPEC open. Can I have a mover to adjourn the meeting until tomorrow? I've checked, we don't have to go up to the office, it's okay. Yep. So moved by councillor Kirby, seconded by councillor Coe, that we adjourn this meeting until 2 p.m. tomorrow. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. That's carried. Thank you. We can carry on. Thanks, Mark.
Option 2 is the climate change, right? Yeah. Okay, so option 2. So thank you, Your Worship. So option 2 is we've had a look at a new rate, introducing a 14th rate to the rating system called a climate action targeted rate. Honestly, it could be called anything. We just called it a climate action targeted rate. As the Chief Executive said, the council did declare a climate change emergency, and this is just getting giving some transparency that we have a rate specifically for climate action related activities. So, as the slide said, bring greater focus on climate mitigation work with transparent funding, and the revenue required would shift from we wouldn't be rating for more. We would just be actually taking some money out of the district-wide general rate and putting it into a new rate. And we've suggested 500,000 as we've looked at $500,000 worth of costs and said we'll start there. Crawl, walk, run. It does get very, very complicated, and it's very hard to say. If you look at all of our budgets, everything that's related to climate change needs to go to a climate rate. It's very, very hard to do that because it's embedded across the whole business. But we were able to identify some costs, 500,000, that we could say with confidence, pop that into a climate action targeted rate. So when we say targeted rate, it's targeted to the whole district. So we're proposing that it would be a capital value rate. So we're taking money out of the district-wide general, which is a land value rate, and we're proposing that this would be a rate levied by capital value. So if you go back, if you think about that pie chart, 16% was capital value. So we're trying to get more of our rating system to capital value, and then we had a great proportion of land value. We're trying to shrink that. So we're trying to look at the slices and get to that dream of a third, a third, a third. Okay, so this table is a little bit different. So we're saying, okay, so we'll repeat this. So it's the 23-24 rates based on the new valuations across the sector. So that first column hasn't changed at all. And then we're looking at the 24-25 proposed rates increase, which is a $12 million uplift, which is at the moment 12% rates increase, divvied by sector. And but we've also introduced the new climate change rate, which is a rate in the dollar capital value. So we look at, so it's this column there that we're looking at. So we would say if we did the climate change, commercial would go to 10.7, lifestyle shifts to 8.06. As we know that, again, it comes back to those initial slides on the district-wide revaluation that the capital value of commercial and lifestyle did go up, so they'd be paying more. So we've increased the capital value. So residential would go to 79.3. So instead of paying $8 million more, we would only be putting 7.98 on the residential, because you're getting the commercial and the lifestyle to pay a little bit more because it's a rate in the dollar capital value. So by introducing the climate change rate, the residential sector is paying a little bit less, and everyone else is paying a little bit more just by putting 500,000. And in context, our rates are currently 90.8 million, and they're moving to 105 million. So 500,000 does have a small impact. So I think it was just over 8 million. So it's taking $200,000 off the residential sector and putting it on the other sectors. So if we wanted to look at, so if you introduce this new rate, what would be the impact on all properties across the sector? Again, it's a small change. So we're not going to see massive change in our distribution curve. Most properties are sitting on the 8 to 10%, some in 10 to 12, and some below at 6 to 8. So it's relatively similar. We're not talking about massive change here. Commercial is sitting between 6 and 12. That's the distribution curve. As I said, residential is about where we'd see 6 to 12. Most residential 8 to 10 with this new rate. Lifestyle 10 to 12. Larger properties, higher land value, and as a result, higher capital value as well. Rural. And then we go into different areas. So this is the impact on Ōtaki. Ōtaki commercial. Remembering that, Ōtaki commercial, Ōtaki residential, so we're leaning towards the right. We know that we're going to have a significant rates increase because we're going up 12%. Lifestyle, rural, this is all in Ōtaki. Waikanae. For the residential properties. Oh.
I think.
Sorry, for rural and Ōtaki.
We've got their buzzers on, and people online can't hear.
Hang on a minute, Nigel. I'll actually just go through the list. Thank you, Jocelyn. Shelley.
I just think if we say we're going to add a rate, even if it's not increasing the rate take, it's not going to be received very well by the community. Why can't we just ring fence it and put a nice bit of wording around the fact that we're committing some money towards climate action within the rates? Because I know that what's going to come from this, we're adding more rates. They don't get all this information, so it's very hard to understand. I think.
You're not.
The horse has bolted on that a little bit. We've already got the message out there that this is an extra rate on top of our rates. So, yeah, and it's hard to disavow people of the fact that they've already been told. Liz?
I'm a little bit confused as to why, if we want to move to more of a capital based rating system, it has to be done via a targeted rate. You know, why can we not just agree to have capital value as a bigger component of our rate take? Does that require a consultation process or something?
I think we are doing a consultation process. This is this whole thing, yeah. So why can't we just move? Why can't we just adjust the pie chart? Is the question.
Yeah, why can't
To
we
a
just
third, a
say
third, a
that
third.
we're now rating on capital value to a greater extent?
Why is the
than
dream
land? Why-
dissipating, Mark?
Oh, you'll see in the next section. In the next sections. Look, we've just.
Is it better to hold that question?
Yes,
then?
I think so.
Should we hold that
Hold it.
question?
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to say is, you could extend this to a much greater degree and say, well, okay, let's look at our rates take and chunk that down by all of the outcomes that we produce as a council, so that people can pick and choose, what outcomes they want council to deliver on. We've got climate, we've got community facilities, we've got economic development, we've got, you name it. You could break it all down like that if you wanted to go the whole hog, and then people could say, well, yeah, I'll have that and that and that, but not that. Why would you not do that? Why just pick on
So is it a
climate?
rhetorical question, or are you seriously suggesting chunking down all our council activities and rating individually?
Well,
on them?
potentially you could. I mean, it's just project-based accounting in essence, and it gives people the ability to choose.
I just take the word "just" out of that sentence, because project-based accounting in an organisation of this scale, I don't think would be a small task. Maybe you'd like to comment, Darren?
Happy to. And I think Mark will add to what I say. Private sector's really good because we don't have to consult. We are servant to our communities, and so by just making a change and going out to the 20-odd thousand households or the 54,000 people that live in our community is a big deal for us, and it is a lot of work. And so if we want to change our rating system, And just by changing one component of the rating system, we must go out and consult. We don't get to pick and choose when we consult and when we don't, because of our one, because of legislation, and secondly because of the policies that we have in place. So in an ideal world, yes, it would be nice to be able to have plug and play and pick and choose what it is that we would like to see. But as elected members, representative of this community, that is the mandate that the community gives you to be able to make those decisions. And it's with the best advice that we provide you, it is the will of the table that indicates the direction of travel for us. So to make bulk change would be very, very challenging at this moment in time.
I'm not sure that answers my question. Are you saying that if we have a climate action targeted rate, that doesn't require consultation with the community?
No. If you make any change to your rating system, so this effectively is introducing a new rate. So under legislation, you must consult with the community.
Right.
But there's a couple of things. That I'd like to comment on. So what we discussed earlier is, so this is a new rate, which is just being used to create a new slice. It is not increasing your rates. What we've already presented as a rates increase, that's increasing the rates. This rate is not increasing the rates. It's just allocating it in a different way. And when we looked at it, we went, well, how would we rate a climate action rate? If we made it a fixed charge, we're going to actually have an even more aggressive rating system. So that 42% would go to 44. If we hit the land value, that 38% is going to go to 40. So what would be the fairest way of levying a climate action rate on the community? And where we came up to is we're pretty light on capital value. Capital value is widely regarded as an ability to pay. It's simple, people understand it, and it's targeted only in the sense that it would be applied to everyone. So you could just as easily have a district-wide climate action rate that's levied by capital value. But we think if you were going to have a climate action rate and you're just changing the allocation, it would be far better and optically more acceptable to have a targeted capital value rate. But it is a new rate, and you would have to consult with the community on that.
Well, I'll leave it there because I'm still confused by why we would do that. Why would we not just shift the rating to a higher percentage on capital value and not call it climate action targeted rate or whatever,
Because we don't have many capital value rates. You've got your community rates for your community boards, which are capital value, and you've got a roading rate on capital value, and a lot of the climate action stuff that we do is actually all pegged to the district-wide general. So we don't actually have a rate in the current rating system that you could just increase the capital value to do the climate change. And the community, I'll call it community board rates because that's what they are. If you suddenly substantially increase those, it would be very noticeable. So we don't have any capital value rates that we could do this. We have to create a new one.
Yeah, but can you not just have a general capital?
Yes,
rate?
You can. It could be called a district-wide capital rate, capital climate action rate.
Well, that would be a
the
lot
question
simpler.
is, why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah.
So I guess the premise behind why they're called targeted is because they're targeted for a specific purpose as opposed to whether it's district or a certain part of the community. So I guess if I'm understanding your question is more around why don't we just straight off the board move everything primarily to a capital value based rate.
Not everything, but
Not everything, just the amount we were going to put into a climate rate.
Yeah, and we could certainly do that. We would have to consult on that.
You have to consult either way.
So whether we
Yeah,
call it
well, that's
climate
right,
or
so-
whether we call it something else,
So,
I'll
just
just
a note.
lose the label.
I'm wondering if,
but I guess, yeah, essentially what we'd be doing is moving from a district-wide general land value rate then, a general rate, which funds obviously a wide range of activities, to, if I'm understanding you, to a general rate based on capital value.
yeah,
Well, just enough to get your one-third,
Yeah.
one-third, one-third.
So my comment on that is we did something similar with the roading rate over the last two long-term plans. That was funded through a fixed charge and a land value-based rate, and we transitioned those to a capital value-based rate. So we had a period where we had two rates for the same purpose. In all honesty, explaining that to the community was quite hard. They just felt that we were double charging them. So,
yeah, I think the thing is that it causes quite a shift in some people's bills all of a sudden if you change the model too much straight away, particularly in Waikanai, I think,
Well, I'm not suggesting
where
that
the capital values are higher, the land values
I'm not
in
suggesting
proportion
we
to the land
suddenly
values.
switch to total, all capital value.
But just bumping it up
yeah,
again.
just bumping it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sophie, do you want to say anything about why you proposed a climate rate in the first place? Just so that we can get our heads a little bit around the motivation or the reason behind it.
Yeah,
So I think that's why the staff are not being able to provide an answer to Liz's question, is because it was actually probably more of a politically motivated suggestion. But I think we're interested in hearing some of the practical benefits of that you might have heard about elsewhere.
Yeah, sure. So, as Mark has said, Auckland City Council and Wellington City Council, I believe they're consulting on it through this long-term plan, or may have already introduced their climate action targeted rate. Auckland has already confirmed theirs, and Wellington's consulting. Yeah, so Gwen and I brought this through the last long-term plan discussion when we were early kind of in the process of talking about our district-wide emissions reduction journey and enabling the community to play a role in that through a contribution to council so that we could further take district-wide action. And as we talked about at the last workshop we had on the long-term plan, the fact that it wouldn't be a levy and that it would just be, as Mark said, some ring-fenced rates would then mean that for this long-term plan we keep it as it is, but for future long-term plans, as we develop up alongside the think tank, our emissions reduction implementation plan for the district, then we have the opportunity to reflect that action through this rate to ensure that the community understands how that implementation plan is funded. So it gives the opportunity at a district-wide level for the community to actively contribute to that action that council's taking and to give transparency to it as well. So as Mark said, it wouldn't this time around increase the rates. So I'm kind of a little bit, I guess, there's questions in my mind about why there hasn't been concern from elected members in the previous briefings that this has been raised at, because it has been given some voice to through the conversation about what will be in the consultation document. And the fact that if we were to kind of break up the piece in the pie and add it to the list of already 14 rates that we do have, so our rating system's already relatively complex, that because there is a model of this in other places where they've done a similar thing, just break out their spending on climate and ring fence it, that, yeah, we're just essentially catching up with the times in a way, because it's happening in other places as well. So I can send through to elected members who are interested the proposal that Gwen and I did up for the last long-term plan discussion, which we socialised at the time, because that has some more information about exactly how it's been used in Auckland.
I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm not seeing a problem with it, and it does speak to our commitment to actually securing our commitment. No, do you want to add anything more, Sophie, before I move to Nigel? Sophie, can we have Sophie back? Thanks.
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to say is as Mark, you've said, you'll bring back some more information on Thursday as well, so we don't need to make a decision today as to whether it's included in the consultation document, but continuing on with the kind of under the assumption that it's likely to be, depending on the appetite from elected members. But I would be keen for you to have a read through that proposal that Gwyn and I put forward at the last long-term plan to kind of fully, to fully bring ourselves up to speed as to how it could be used. But I'd be keen for us to wait until we receive that extra information on Thursday from Mark and the team. Yeah.
I'm not seeing disbenefits, and that is a word. Nigel?
I think the primary benefit is transparency. This council declared it a climate emergency. Council has dedicated X number of dollars to carrying out its policies around this. All this does is go, this is where it's coming from. So I think, and because this council hasn't resiled from that, we haven't gone, no, there isn't one after all. So I think as a council, you need to own it. Just own it. Go, this is what we're doing. This is what we said we're going to do. And so we're doing it. Because I'd hate to pretend that it's just going over there, but it's really there, really using it for climate change action. Let's just tell people what we're actually using it for. Yeah, look, the people who are going to go, they're all bloody green lunatics down there, well, they're still going to say that anyway. So I would just be honest about it.
Thank you, Nigel, for that thought. Glenn?
I agree with Nigel in that if we're going to do it, it needs to be absolutely open and transparent, and that's where it's going. Having said that, I don't know if anyone's picked up the community feel recently around the 12 to 17%. And by the way, it wasn't me that put that in the public arena, it was already in there. I've obviously commented on it, which we're well aware of. And I just think reputational damage to the council of trying to sell this levy or rate. The complexity of this is enormous, and there's probably many people around this room, myself included, that don't actually understand the total complexity of it. And trying to sell a new rate to the community, but saying, don't worry, it's not adding to your rates that are going up 17%, or by the way, maybe you're over there 20%, or 13 or 12, or whatever you land on, which is still going to be a hell of a shock to people, I would suggest is near impossible. I'd rather see that we actually do a little bit of work inside the organisation and actually celebrate the fact that we spend 800,000 or 700,000 or 500,000 and still use that money for the good work that our climate people do in the right places with good outcomes. I'd rather see that we really celebrate that and let the community celebrate it, as opposed to the community going, oh, well, I've just been whacked with 19%, and by the way, there's a levy in there for climate change. I just think the optics are hard to sell. I think it will reputationally it'd be hard to come back from. And I think there are better ways of achieving Sophie's goals. Well, not Sophie's goals, that's really unfair.
The planet's goals, Glenn.
The organisation's goals in the climate emergency than losing confidence from the community around how we are running our business. Not we are, but how the business is being run. So I just think we need to be really careful. And it would be tough for me to support that new rate or levy based on our reputational and optics.
So just a quick question from me before I go to Martin. So we've got option one, option two. Option one is the status quo. Option two is introducing the climate levy. Have we got an option that shifts more to capital valuation another way?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Moving to Nigel, to Martin.
I just want to clarify a few things, and I do agree with what Coops is saying as well with regards to the optics on this. So this isn't a new rate per se. It's just a reallocation of current spending, and we're calling it what we actually spend it on. Is that right?
Partly. It would be a new rate, but it is an allocation of current spending.
So a new rate means that we're increasing the rates to cover this.
No, a new rate is you're setting. So physically, the rating system has a new rate,
Yep.
and you're setting another rate in the dollar capital value that doesn't currently exist.
So coming back to what Glenn was saying, it's about the wording, it's about the understanding. So new rate means a new rate. If it goes out in the community, they're not interested in anything else. It's just a new rate and that sort of stuff. And again, we can ring think this internally, but we go out there and say it's a new rate. We're going to get a hiding. Because there's that lack of understanding around it. I understand the reasoning behind it, Sophie, with regards to, it's not going to impact anything at ring fences, and then from future, if we need to increase that based on evidence and whatever, like that, we've got a pathway to do that. But I'm just concerned about the wording around it. If we can perhaps word it differently, so it doesn't sound. It's one of those things, it is what it is, and that sort of stuff. But is there some different, it's a reconfiguration, or it's a breakdown of, or something like that, versus calling it a new rate per se, or it's a fit for purpose rate, or something along that sort of line. It can be something as simple, but wording does make the difference. And I'll just use this as an example. The hiding we're getting out there in social media with Calm at the moment, and the CAP stuff and everything like this. This has the potential to fire off in that direction, in my opinion, with regards to perception, because it's about perception. So that's my concern. I understand it's not impacting on us financially per se. It's just a moving around of things. But in this particular climate at the moment, people are fishing for something like this to target with regards to laying the blame on. We're in a blame society at the moment. So I'm wary about that.
Lawrence?
Yeah, transparency is important around what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I want to land a little bit on what Liz was saying. The way that we present this to our community is really important. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the percentages and whether it's land value, CV, whatever. Our community actually, when they make decisions about where money is spent and whether they're happy with it being spent there, I think would prefer to know our libraries and pools cost us this much at this level of service. Our action and climate costs us this much. Our depreciation costs this much. Our insurance costs this much. They want it presented like that, and then to be able to go, if you're not happy with 17%, then we drop this out of libraries, gives you 12, and you'll get libraries open from 11 a.m. till 4 p.m. in the evening. They've got to know what, personally, they've got to know what things cost to run, if we're going to drop stuff out, if you're going to drop stuff out and give people real options about how we spend our money, you've got to present it in a way that they engage with and know. If you're going to save 2% and we're going to take it out of roads, that means you're going to have more potholes and less footpaths and all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that is real for the people we deal with every day, is that kind of stuff. So talking percentages of whether it's CV or LV or whatever, how we make it up and break it down, actually is not, they don't really get that. What they want to see is, what are you spending it on? And if we're going to go for a 5% increase, and we want a 5% increase, then you're going to, what we present to them is say, well, that's going to cost you in this, 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 and this.
I get what you're saying, Lawrence, but that's the rest of the long-term plan, where we do that, where we consult on levels of service and activities.
But it starts at this sort of conversation, though.
But this is a rates review. So what we're talking about is rates and how they're charged, not what we're spending them on. Do you see the difference?
Yes, but the two things are related. You can't separate them.
I guess that's where it's got muddied, yeah.
Because we're spending on climate action. Actually, we spend $8 million a year on climate action. I'm just pulling a figure out of the sky.
I see where you're coming from, yeah.
But we're only targeting and saying 500,000. That's not transparent. The reality is, if you want climate action, it costs us $10 million, and that contributes 10% to your rates increase. I'm just pulling, and I don't want to pick on climate, I'm just saying.
We're getting quite bogged down.
Yeah, we are. We're really getting bogged down, actually. So what we're talking about, on the back of us being asked to work something up, to come to you to discuss, is about how we slice the pie. It's that simple. It is how we slice the pie. And we thought we would start with something that was relatively easy to do, in that it's not the 8 million, but it's a percentage of, and each year we adjust that slice of the pie so that you get to see. Our ratepayers get to see that this council, who has declared a climate emergency and makes bold statements about things, is actually following through on how we allocate the money. We're not tethered to it as officers, but we thought it was a good start place for you when we're thinking about how we cut up the rates take. What it means, we're not increasing anything. This is not an increase. If we take back the Wellington NZ money, that's an increase, because we will have to start charging for it. And that doesn't mean that Greater Wellington doesn't still charge for something, because that's beyond our control. So that is a very, very different example. So this is a really good discussion as to how difficult it is, because we are so legislatively bound. We have to use terms like a new rate, because that's what we're doing. We're creating a new classification to rate. So we can't call it anything other than that, because it doesn't exist currently. But the narrative behind that new rate is the really important bit, and it doesn't change the bottom line. So I guess that's where we are. It's about the narrative.
Have you finished your line of thought, Lawrence?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to go to Jocelyn next.
Thank you. I was actually almost going to turn my light off, but I'll seeing I've got the floor. I'll now ask the question.
Don't feel under any pressure.
No,
Jocelyn.
I'll be very brief. So the CE made the comment about the way we slice the pie, and to me, putting ring fences around rates in a particular area means that we're going to be spending it generally in that area. My question is, if we are going to, I suppose the question is whether or not this money that we're talking here is already, well, what we're hearing is it's already there, or whether it's been increased. We don't quite know there what's going to be missed out in terms of work, CapEx or OpEx.
So thank you. So we've presented over 7th, 9th, 12th of November. We went through what was actually causing your rates increase. It's your depreciation, your interest, your inflation. You've kept the levels of service all the same. So it's existing money. So you haven't increased your budget by $2 million for climate. We've seen a $2 million cost pressure for infrastructure, for place and space, and we've seen a $1.4 million increase to economic development. So we have never brought to the table that you've increased your budget for climate change. In terms of the consultation document, so today's briefing is to present options and to get a steer from you where we go. But staff will be working up, when you propose, in terms of the consultation document, it's got a section called Rating System Review, and it'll propose a new rate, and it has to explain why. Why are you advocating for the change? Why is it fair? Why is it equitable? What impact does it have on your rate? So all that's a given. We have to do that. So last week we got a really clear steer from you. What are the main consultation topics? And the rating system change is secondary. It's not one of your big ones. So it is in the consultation document. The narrative has to be clearly explained. Then I think it's a great idea to put in the consultation document the costs of the levels of service. It's what we put in our annual report. We put it in our annual plan. We've got a great little diagram so we can do that as well. But we have not brought to the table a massive increase in your rates revenue to fund a big increase in your climate action. It's existing money that you've already got. You're just slicing the pie a different way. And it's an option that we've been asked to bring back to the table.
I think what you just said was really good. We've got a recording of it. We'll write it down later. I'd really like to finish this option and let us all get a cup of tea. So, but I've got Liz and Nigel
I'll
and
just
Bede.
be real quick. Yeah, I think, well, my view is that we leave ourselves wide open to climate change deniers by singling out that area in our rating system. I would much prefer to see a breakdown somewhere in our consultation document of our spending broken down roughly by outcomes to say, well, here's the rates we get in and here's the outcomes that you receive in exchange for that. We don't label the targeted commercial rate as an economic development rate, for example. You know, why is that treated differently? You know, let's not muddy the income versus the expenses. Let's have a rating system that's a combination of land value, capital value, and whatever. What was the third thing? Fixed charges, and but have something in there that gives people an idea of where that money is going, so that they can say, well, actually, I don't want that, but I don't want that, and I don't want that, but I do want these bits, in terms of the service delivery and the outcomes that we're providing. To me, that makes a lot better sense. And you know, yes, you can say, okay, climate ranks as a higher priority because we've declared an emergency. Well, I would argue a lot of other things are just as important as that, in terms of our outcomes that we deliver on. And I think I don't think we want to do things just because it's politically driven. There's a political agenda in behind it.
I think it's politically driven because some people think it is the most important thing
Yeah.
we're doing.
Yeah.
Myself included.
Okay.
All
right.
Nigel?
Yeah, just quickly, the one of the things about that level of service, you know, that we go out and we tell people this is what we spend on pools, this is what we spend on libraries. They don't actually get a choice about which ones they're going to pay for. They're paying for it. That's what you get your rates for. That's up to us to determine what we think the priorities are, right? So from the ratepayer point of view, they just get the rate. I think the being transparent about our rate, Glenn is 100% correct. The public will ally this to whatever rate increase there is. But we just have to own that. And the fact is, not all of the money that's being rated for and being spent in climate action is about, you know, doing the Greta Thunberg saving the planet. A lot of it is about practical stuff in our own communities, which a lot of it we'd probably be doing anyway, just because it makes sense to do it. So it isn't all about, you know, saving polar bears. So there's a lot of practical stuff going on, right? So, and again, my advice is that we, as a council, we just own this stuff, and let's make these guys' life a little bit easier.
I don't think we've got a unanimous decision around this. So, did you want to make a comment on that, Mark? No? Bede?
Thank you. Until I started this briefing, I actually was quite comfortable with this rate, but you've changed my mind. I'm confused, and I'm not sure I can unpack all my confusion in this moment, so forgive me, I'm thinking out loud. This rate is either adding to the rates base or it's not. So if it's doing extra work than what we're currently doing, then it's adding to the rates base. If it's not doing extra work, then it's not adding to the rates base. So presumably if it's not adding to the rates base, then it's not doing any extra work. So we've got a climate think tank at the moment that's thinking about how we deal with the climate. Great. So presumably if they come up with any new ideas, that won't get funded through this rate, because this is only for existing work. So presumably then the point of separating this rate out is so that in future it can be increased to do that work. But I feel that that's not really kind of being honestly communicated in this conversation. So the danger, I think, in having a separate rate is that a future council could look at it and say, we don't want to do that anymore, and the climate work goes backwards, not forwards, because you're suddenly politicising it. I think there's a whole lot more that I could probably say about that conversation, but I haven't clarified my own thoughts. But like I said, I was comfortable with it, but now I'm very confused and not comfortable.
You've actually made me less confused by what you've just said, Bede. Shelley? And then I'll go back to Mark.
My question is, if we're going to go out and consult on this and the community says, no thanks, where are you going to get the 500 grand from? Because that'll be off the table. No? That's not a risk? But they might say no thanks.
Can
So,
we just go back to the status quo?
Yeah.
Mark, respond, please.
so thank you, Your Worship. So if they say no, so effectively what we're advocating is 500,000 that's in the district-wide general would go into new rate. If they say no, it goes back into the district-wide general. It doesn't change the overall rates revenue requirement. It's not a yes or no. So if it's no, it comes out. It stays there. It's just it's the same amount of work, just through a different rate. Your options are put 500,000 in, or you could put whatever the number is, 8 million. We probably do have round about that amount that goes towards climate change, so you could put that in a rate. But just to make a statement, so 6 years ago, the commercial rate, we never had a commercial rate, and actually it was consulted on, and it is a targeted rate, and it is a capital value rate, and it started at 250, and then it went to 500, and then it went to 750. So it was part of the consultation document, but it was a crawl, walk, run. We didn't have a commercial rate. That burden was 100% on the residential ratepayers. So this council has introduced a new rate. It was done slowly. It was properly explained, and that's what we're advocating with this. We're not adding money.
Yeah.
And yes, in future we might be able to ring fence some more activities to put to that rate, but it has to be clearly communicated to the community. But you don't lose the 500,000 if they say no. But you have to consult on it.
Okay, we're just going to pause there. Sorry, Rob, not trying to shut you down or anything, but we're going to pause there. We'll come back at 1:45. Just a quick break.
These tornadoes and roofs being ripped off in Lower Hutt, and in the city, like the boys have been held back at school. There's apparently a massive storm in the city. Chris just seen a photo.
Okay, guys, we're going to come back. So I'm just going to close off the climate action targeted rate now. Unless we want to go to the option. Have we got another option first?
Yes.
Okay, let's do the third option and then we'll have a little bit of a
All right, sure.
corridor.
Certainly. So I'm just gonna go right to the next few slides are just showing the impact of that climate change. So we'll just go to option 3. As I said, the impact of this climate action rate's not substantial compared to status quo. So we'll just go to option 3. Okay. And I'll just get there on my own machine. Okay, so I'll just wait for everyone. So option 3, we had a look at the current rates mix and we felt that our fixed charges were sitting in about 43%. So we wanted to look at those fixed charges and see if there's any change we could do to get that close to 30%. So we looked at all the fixed charges and it was the community facilities fixed charge, it's over $1,000, that we wanted to just model and look at some options. So just as a starter for 10, this isn't a great option, but we'll take you through why. So we had a look at changing it from a fixed charge to capital value, and the bell curve is actually really, really scary. So when we have a look at that, so you've just to recap, you've obviously got the district-wide revaluation, lifting capital values across the district, and then you're effectively putting this proposal is to change the community facilities instead of a fixed charge to a rate in the dollar capital value, and across all the sectors, so the commercial, the rural, the lifestyle, the residential, this effectively is the bell curve, and you can see that this area there is the concern. It's not what you want to see. You're seeing basically properties will go from, that's the 0 point, that's 0 to 2, but you can effectively be pushing properties to 15 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50. There's even properties that are going to have a 50% rates increase by moving this to capital value. So I'll take you through the slides. It was good to see it. It was good to model it. You've got to model these things. You've got to look at them, but it really isn't a sustainable option at all. And the conclusion that we had is actually keeping it a fixed charge is actually probably a good idea. So, but I'll take you through, but we'll go through really quickly. Yeah, it's a separately used or inhabitable part of a rating unit. Yeah.
Or home and business.
So this is the impact across the commercial. So we know that commercial, we're putting $1 million more on commercial under the current rating system. We've seen an uplift in the commercial playing catch up. They've had a higher capital value increase, and so that effectively is that's just showing what is the impact on what would be the impact of this change on all commercial properties. So it's, you've got some commercial properties that are 30 to 40%, 20 to 30%. I mean, quite high numbers. And so if there's going to be a backlash, it'll be there. This is residential, so you're actually putting quite significant rates increases on residential because of the capital value, and a fixed charge of over $1,000 is high. So what the model showed us is not a great option, to be honest, and you can see lifestyle, you're still very much leaning towards the right-hand side, which is the bad place to be. It's big increases on those lifestyle properties, and bulk of them are sitting 20 to 30%. So, that's just not fair or equitable at all. And then this is what's happening to rural, because they've got large capital values. So then we go down into ward. This is what happens to Otaki. Obviously, that's not great. This is the commercial in Otaki. Yes, you do have a lot of properties to the left. So your 0% marker is, it's -40. So that's your no impact. So yes, of course, on commercial you've got a lot paying less, but you've got a lot paying more as well. And then residential, you've probably got more paying more. So I'll just speed through these because we're actually not recommending this option. We've looked at the modelling and we're saying to you, well, don't do this one. Why can I? That's for all properties. You got much higher weight distribution on the right. So, and these slides are in LG Hub as well. If you wanted to go through the detail and fire through any questions to us, we'll be happy to take questions on a case by case. Romati. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask my question now?
I'm too busy looking at my slides. Liz?
So the reason this has a bigger impact is simply because it's a bigger number. It
Yes.
has more impact.
Yep.
Because I just think we're really confusing two things here. And I'm thinking back to what Sophie said about, hey, but we talked about a targeted rate for climate change, and we've already discussed that, and how come you agreed to it, then you're not so sure now. So I'm thinking we need to separate out the need to shift more of our rates to a capital basis from what we do with targeted rates for climate change or whatever. When we talked about the targeted climate change rate, I was thinking about that as being additional money that we would target to spend on climate change, not just shifting what we currently spend into another category. And I think this is where it's getting confusing, because we're trying to kill two birds with one stone. So to me, it seems to make sense to shift more of our rating base to capital value. Let's work out what would give the right balance with that, and then talk about what we do in terms of climate change or whatever. But I was thinking it would be additional to what we spend now, not the current spending.
Yeah, thank you. So the proposal is the current spending, allocating it a different way. And to go back to the climate action targeted rate is 500,000. The community facilities rate is $26 million. So you're putting $26 million from a fixed charge onto a capital value across the district. So that's why we're saying, that's why we're saying off the charts distribution curve. So fundamentally different.
So it's just a lot easier to just say, well, X amount is now going to be a capital-based rate, and set it at the right thing, rather than trying to target it to something, label it with something. Just work out what needs to be a general, capital-based rate, and do that, and then think about what we do with climate change or whatever.
Yep. So so it's not one of our options, but we can discuss it. So you've got a district-wide general rate, which is $37 million, and it's a land value. So you could potentially, Vicky's going to kick me under the table, but you could split that between a land value and a capital value.
That's right.
The only thing is, we talked about this. When you do that, you sometimes the rates team field a whole lot of calls from people when they look at their rates bill. They see district-wide rate, and they go, "You've double counted. You haven't done it correctly. You've overcharged me." They don't care whether it's a land value or capital value rate. They just see two of the rates are the same, and it's an error. So we used to get that. We used to get that with the rating rate. We had a land value and a capital value. But yes, it's a different. So we were trying to keep it simple. We were taking the direction because we didn't have enough time to deliver it last time. So it's just an option. So
Nigel?
Sorry, mate. Just in terms of the 12% increase that we're looking at, in normal circumstances, if you weren't looking to go third, but of that 12%, the costs inherent in that, where would they normally be ascribed to? Would they normally be ascribed in the way you're planning to, or is there some shift?
So a lot of those, it's certainly $5 million of those costs, so not the 12, the 17. 5 million of that sitting in your three waters. Then you've got the inflation, which is across the board, so that'll sit in a number of rates. So you've got your so it's the depreciation in the three waters, it's the inflation. We've taken the personnel costs out, so it's mainly sitting in your three waters, to be honest.
And so the next question is, do you have a blunt instrument? So say if you want to go third, just do it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, just have to, whatever blunt instruments are at your leisure, assuming we're sold on the broader philosophy of why you would be doing it, and then just do it.
So look, I don't, and Vicky, correct me if I'm wrong, look, I don't believe we can just do it, because the capital value rates that we currently have in our rating system are only for rating and only for the community boards. So if we had, for example, a district-wide capital value rate already, yes, we've got the ability to do it. But you could say the same for the climate action. You've got the ability to throw 20 million at the climate action rate. So right now, we don't have the ability, we don't have the rates in the rating system to increase our capital value, which is why we are recommending, if you're going to make any changes, introduce a new capital value rate.
So is that a viable option or not? Is it too late to look at it? What's the response?
We can look at it if that's the will of the table. We can look at it.
Yeah, I was just looking back at the graphs, and the climate targeted rate, unless I'm wrong, only makes a difference of 1%. It takes our capital value based rates from 18% to 19%, which is such a tiny thing, and it's taken up hours of our time today, when what we were really trying to do was achieve this closer to this third thing. So say we decided in this rating system, as part of our move to capital value based rates, we would like to put another 10% that's currently in fixed charges into capital value rates. Why would we not do that? I think that's the question that Liz has been trying to ask.
Yeah, so the question is that has to come from rates that we currently have that are fixed charge based,
Yeah, that's
which
right.
are
Yeah.
community facilities, wastewater and water. So I mean, wastewater I certainly wouldn't be recommending a shift in there. So unfortunately we are quite constrained. That literally leaves community facilities, which is why we did look at that as an option.
Oh, why you looked at that.
Yeah. It's just because the amount of rates we collect through that mechanism is such a high proportion of the total rates that it's going to, absolutely we could go down that track, but it's going to have quite an impact on the community.
Yeah, so there'll be some people who Glenn's identified through his, who have that.
You could, but then what you then end up with is two community facilities rates on two different bases, and that's why we also didn't look at that, because of that question mark for ratepayers, that they see two community facilities rates and think that we're double charging them. And it's trying to get that understanding around, well, no, it's the same total amount of rates, we're just recovering it in two different ways.
So are we only is total spend on climate change is more than 500,000? Why was the proposal not to put more into that so that we can start addressing this capital value based rate issue? Why was it only 1%?
That's an easy answer. So we were able because climate change is embedded in all our budgets across the organisation. As a startup for 10, we could easily identify 500,000. So in your funding impact statement rating policy, you have to describe the rate, you have to describe what it's for. So there's 500,000 with certainty that we can say that's what it's for. It was the crawl, walk, run approach, and we genuinely felt with an average rates increase of either 17 or 12%, you didn't want to put too much in. I've just put this on the screen because that's what Vicky was saying. So if you wanted to increase the 16%, which is the capital value, and you're just literally, you're not adding any new money, you're just changing the allocation. It's got to come from either fixed charges or it's got to come from land value. So if you wanted to not touch the fixed charges, and so that the land value is predominantly a district-wide general rate, which is land value. So if you were going to say to us, well, create a new rate called district-wide capital value, that 37% will go down, the 16% will go up. You've still got 42% sitting on your fixed charges. That's still a regressive rating system. Well, that's what Vicky said. So the only big one is actually the community facilities, which is why we proposed to put that into capital value.
Well, that is the other option, reduce your community facilities requirement. But the only other fixed charge components are water and wastewater. So water would be much more complex to change because it is invoiced separately. And wastewater is, basing a wastewater charge on capital value is unusual because I actually did look at that as well.
And to be honest, what we saw with the community facilities, I think I said it was, what is it? It's $26 million. So when we took a sizable fixed charge and moved that to capital value, so when we looked at actually really increasing that capital value segment, it has an astronomical effect. And so we have to be really careful with that. Or you don't do anything.
Well, it is a serious option. It is a serious option. The status quo is an option. The whole thing is so full of. We've got important things to talk about. I don't know. Shelley?
When do we talk about water rates? And if we increased water rates, would it have an effect on our overall rates? And because that's a completely user pays charge.
Oh.
If you use water, you pay for it.
We talk about water rates in this presentation.
So.
Yeah.
Before tomorrow morning. Nigel?
Well, yeah, and I just wondered, and Vicky was talking about wastewater, it seems to me there's still quite a degree of uncertainty about Three Waters. I mean, people have got it in their brain that, this government's getting rid of it, but at the moment, there's no evidence around that or what they're going to do, because they're going to have to do something, clearly. So there's still uncertainty. I wouldn't be taking any bets on anything just yet around that. So I think it's, I would, any of the water stuff, I'd just kind of leave that where it is at the moment. Makes sense.
Cool. Okay, we're going to keep going with the slides.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. So I've just gone to option 4. So option 4 is combining option 2 and 3. So and it's going to, and it is. So good news. We don't have to spend too long on the slides, and we'll just go. You could call that a horrendogram.
Is that what you call a straw man?
There's the lifestyle, yes. Okay. Okay, so, sorry, just bear with
Options 1
me.
and 2 by sector.
I just need to get my, get this in front of me so I can see it, so please just bear with me. Okay, look, won't spend too long on this. It's just summarising what we've been presenting to you. So option 1 is status quo. The key highlight here, so effectively what we're doing is we're putting through the draft rates revenue requirement today through the new valuations, the audited valuations, and effectively we're taking $8 million more rates from residential, 1.1 from commercial, and then just under $1 million from lifestyle. So that's just by doing nothing. If we go to option 2, which is introducing the climate action targeted rate, you can see that we rate the residential sector just under $8 million, 7.98, and the commercial sector pays slightly more, the lifestyle pays slightly more, and the rural pays slightly more, because it's a new capital value rate, which is playing to the capital values, and it's only 500,000. 3 and 4, which I won't spend any time on this because you've already indicated it's not a viable option. We've seen that. But effectively it shifts more burden from the residential sector onto the other sectors. So you only effectively, if you went capital value community facilities charge, throw in the climate action targeted rate, you're only asking for 6.6 million on the residential factor, and you're actually asking sector, and commercial, lifestyle, and rural and utilities are paying a whole lot more because they've got higher capital values. And then this just shows that this is just the breakdown by options. And the Mayor has already highlighted this. There's very little change by introducing the climate action targeted rate because it's such a small amount. It's 500,000 out of 105 million. So the segments don't really change. We start to see a bit of a shift if you do the community facilities rate. That changes things somewhat. And then you get a much bigger shift. So why I said earlier I'm giving up on the dream, because to get to a third, you're making massive changes and you're putting huge rates increases on your sectors, your commercial, your lifestyle, your utilities.
I wonder if it doesn't work because we've got such a string of pearls type communities whose land and capital values vary so much proportionately, so that model just doesn't work for us without it having disproportionate effects.
That's why for many, many years, Paikokariki and Otaki were at this table arguing
Screaming.
strongly against land
I remember there being a thermometer on the outside of the old post office, and the community raised money to get a lawyer to help fight.
That's
for it.
right, because it used to be the biggest proportion was on land value, and at Paikokariki where there was no land, it was built already. So land value was going. You have a mud floor hut on a piece of land, and it was the same as a $1 million house in Waikanae. It was crazy. So that's why they were arguing that case. At some stage, will we be able to present to the community some real world numbers for them? So if I live at 240 Rimu Road and my property value is X and my rate is going to go up, can you tell me for less than a cup of coffee a day, or whatever it's going to be? Because real numbers make a difference to people. And actually, generally speaking, it makes a difference to us as well when it's not, because percentages scare people, right?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So we've had a few conversations that what you just said, the percentage is scary, but if you put it in dollar terms, Whether or not we equate that to a cup of coffee just depends, but something that people can relate to, so they can actually see, well, in terms of the rates increase, what is it in dollar terms? Because it could be high in percentage and low in dollar. So we need to be relative. When we consult, we have our online rates calculator. So what that enables people to do. So when council consults, we must have an average rates increase with our preferred options. So whether that's 12 or 17 or whatever it is, people can go on and they can type in their property address and they can see what their rates actually are. Because we're doing the district-wide rates valuation, that's as advanced as we can get. We can't have a calculator that says, if we consult on 4 options and they say no, what is their rates going to be? It's pretty much showing them in dollar terms what is the impact on their rates for their property. So we have that, and we have to have that built and ready to go. And I think it's Greater Wellington Regional Council rates as well, but it's not the water. It's just ours.
It won't be this year. They're consulting much later.
Okay, so it'll just be the KCDC rate. So we've been in this position in the past. We'll caveat that. Just what I would say, because we've talked a little bit about the district-wide general and the climate action, and what the sense that I'm getting from the room is there's probably, between these options, that option's not enough, and that option's probably too much. We go from a fixed charge of 41 to a fixed charge of 16. We go from a capital value of 19 to a capital value of 43. And what looks wonderful is the land value. So it's probably too big a jump. But there might be something in the middle, but whether the time is right. But you've also got to be equitable, and you've got to be fair, and we've got to be simple. And when we talked about it, we didn't want to have 2 of the same rate by different levy bases because it's confusing.
Jocelyn?
Yeah, so I was going to make this comment earlier on, but I decided I wasn't. But now that we're talking about the community facilities again, when we looked at those individual graphs, rural and lifestyle obviously were way out there in terms of the bill curve graph. I suppose the first thing that came to my mind there was that often people living in these areas are way, way, way away from any community facility. So even though they're paying, potentially, if that rate was implemented, they would be paying a lot and not actually have any facilities, or have very, very limited facilities. And I think, particularly when you think about Te Horo, they have a hall there, but that's actually not a KCDC hall.
It's 5 minutes down the road from Otaki and the pool,
But it's about community. Often these facilities, it says community facilities, and it's within these communities. But I just want to put
that is
there.
a common thing that we do here every time we strike a rate. That's true, Jocelyn.
So what we commonly get from our rural community is, why should they pay the roading rates? But what they forget, for them to get to their property and to get through the district, they've actually got to go on sealed roads. And they have the ability to use the library, they have access to our facilities. So rates are a blunt tool, and that's what we say. So we do this by legislation, and we try our best to make it fair and equitable. Okay. Well, I don't really know how to land this slide, but we made a recommendation that, we've put 4 options on the table. Option 1 was status quo. Option 2 was reallocate 500,000 from your district-wide general land value, pop it into a new capital value rate. It had very little impact. Option 3 was changing a fixed rate to capital value, which didn't look good. And option 4 was going huge and increasing your capital value, which we don't recommend. So look, our recommendation on the options that we modelled was to go with option 1, introduce a new rate, but make sure the narrative clearly explains what we're doing and why we're doing it. But it's part of the rating system. It is not one of your primary consultation topics in your consultation document.
Yeah, Yeah, we're not making a decision today, but it's good to kind of get a bit of an idea so that they can start to prepare consultation documents and things like that. I'll just go to Lawrence, but rather than saying anything at this point.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm probably leaning towards option one because it just seems to be less of a hiding for us at the moment. But that's a purely probably political facing community decision more than anything. The thing I'm probably interested in is unpicking conversations around if we set up a new rate called Climate Action Targeted Rate. There's been a couple of suggestions in conversations today that that would be then used later for particular work that we wanted to do and increased accordingly. And if that's the case, I think we need to be pretty clear in our communication that that is a vehicle that could be used later for that. Not just put it in here to under the auspices of shifting our rating base away from land value to CV, and this is the method we're doing it because we're actually, there's another reason that also exists, which is later on to increase income for climate action specifically. I think we need I think that narrative needs to be transparent if that is the case. I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying.
That's one of the future benefits. I think primarily, though, this is making a statement, and I don't think that statement is going to land particularly well at the moment. I think it's too easy to misunderstand it as extra spending, no matter how we communicate it. And we're going to be quite busy communicating quite a lot of things, and spending time communicating this, trying to explain it, trying to explain that it's just a piece of the pie that we're moving around, and for what tangible benefit. We'll still be doing this work. We'll still be committed to it. I don't think we need a rate for it to embed it into our goals right now.
And
I think we've already started to lose the narrative on it, even before we discuss it, unfortunately.
And I think we need to also just be constantly cognizant of what's going on at Central and the angst that is creating across our communities around the changes and projected things, both positively and negatively around what's happening. That's a lot of noise for us to be making other changes that then create more angst potentially in our communities when it's unnecessary. I think 19 or 17% is enough angst without potentially creating others.
Yeah.
Just my thoughts.
I think I agree with the Deputy Mayor in those thoughts at the moment. Sophie?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear the conversation in the room. I think if we had have had the same attitude, for example, with the Māori ward conversation, then we might not have gone out and consulted on that because we supposedly thought that we knew what the consultation feedback would be, and we kind of got what we expected, but then made that decision because it was the right the right move to make. And I think what's also interesting is that in the Auckland City Council's consultation around the inclusion of a climate action targeted rate within their long-term plan and their rating system, 68% of Aucklanders supported the proposal, and it was actually an increase in rates. And not only was it added to their system, there was actually a 2.2% increase in rates specifically attributed to this climate action targeted rate. And 68% of people in Auckland who submitted on the long-term plan supported the proposal, which is 9,200 people. So I think when we've asked our community whether they want us to both take more climate action and also to make it a priority within our council systems, the way we structure our finances, our organisation, again, the majority of people have come back, and the multiple times we've surveyed them, to say that this is a priority for them through our strategic priorities. We've identified it as such. And so I think that this gives us the opportunity to not only make that transparent, but also, as was mentioned several times, to give us the opportunity to look at how we could increase that in the future, but through setting up a space for it, a ring-fenced space for it, a transparent space for it within the way that we rate. It gives us the opportunity to do that and to I guess, just ask the community what they think. And I think we may be surprised at the response we hear back. A few people have said it's a kind of a politically motivated thing to do or to progress. But and sure, there'll be some people who don't support it, but I also think there'll be a bunch of people who will, if we don't ask the community this question, who will also be just as upset or frustrated at the fact that it hasn't been included as part of the process. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to say, why don't we at least put it in there? And Mark, sorry, to clarify, you mentioned that the recommendation was option 1, but option 2 is on the screen.
Option 2, sorry.
And just wanted to clarify, so if we were to include it in the consultation document, even though it's a relatively significant change to the rating system, it wouldn't need to be a key consultation question unless we wanted it to be.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, Rob?
Yep, I agree entirely with that, Sophie. I think we've just got to be careful with the narrative. If we go climate change, okay, the question is, what is climate change? Okay, it's emergency, it's stormwater, we got flooding, it's coastal defences, we've got, tides taking out the foreshore. A lot of this can be allowed for with rating the beachfront properties perhaps separately, or providing bigger stormwater pipes with the development levies. But hey, the rating system, I've seen that change quite a lot, and the narrative in the 80s was rates were based on how many toilets you had, and that went down like a lead balloon. That was changed pretty quickly. But yeah, also Councillor Wilson's comment on the Three Waters introducing 5% increase to the rates is sort of grey area too. So I think we just got to sort of just review it and think about it a bit and put it together. I think it's going the right direction though. Thanks.
Bede?
Thank you. I think I might have reconciled some of my confusion. So, Mark, in accounting, when you talk about intent and how important intent often is in an action or a decision you make to do with what seems otherwise clear in terms of black and white, your intention and how you do things makes a difference to IRD. I think I maybe feel a little bit the same way about this. If the intent to create this as a targeted rate is that it allows that flexibility in the future, cool, but let's be honest about it. I think that's when I sit here and listen to talk about it being not increasing rates, I hear you, and I don't want to offend you, but I feel like I'm being had, because I know the intention is to increase rates down the track. So let's just be honest about it. To the councillors who stood on election and talked about climate change, now's your time to support your election promises. I'd rather see you, rather than, living on your knees in conformity, stand up, die on your feet for honesty. Be councillors that people can be proud of, if that's what you believe in. If it's not what you believe in, then cool, don't.
These are my principles, and if you don't like them, I have others. I agree completely with comrades Hanford and Coford there. It is about being transparent. This is going specifically to this area. There will be public feedback, but that's cool. That's part of the deal. I yield really to Mark and Vicky, who have gone through the options and have a greater skill than I do in this area, and I think the recommendation works for me. So I would completely support that. In order to not support it, I would have to have a better case than you've put, and I don't have a better case. I think that makes sense. It doesn't come without some degree of political courage, which is required. But that's, as Bede said, you know, the people put their hand up and said, you know, we take this seriously and we meant it. So just giving effect to it.
Jocelyn?
Yeah, so by including it, I think it should be very clear in the consultation document and in the survey. What I'm hearing is that may not be the case.
Yeah. With Auckland, I just want to say, Sophie, with Auckland, it was extra revenue and there were actions attached to it that were, do you want us to spend extra money doing these actions? I'm not, it's worth having political courage. If you're seeing a tangible positive outcome, that's the bit that's missing for me. So we're already doing, so what's the point of picking a fight if we're already doing it anyway? I'm not seeing the benefit. I need to know what we're going to do with it, how it's going to improve things in terms of our climate action. And that's what I'm not seeing. So, sorry, Jocelyn, you've still got the microphone.
Yeah, so I think if you do include it, then it should be very transparent that we are doing it both in the consultation document and in the survey. But if we don't make this change, then the money's going to be there anyway. So as you said, we're not going to be picking a fight. So you either do it or you don't, but if you do it, you need to say, we're doing this, and as Sophie's suggesting, there's going to be a very positive response. Others are not saying so, we'll find out. Mind you, that doesn't mean to say we'll agree with what the consultation says.
Martin.
Great politicking.
I just don't want us to waste our time, that's all. Martin?
Yeah, like I hear what you're saying. I'm happy to go with the recommendation. I think we're in hiding, doesn't matter what we do. We've spoken about being aspirational and the other bits and pieces. So to me, if it suits officers to bring this out and to put a label to it, that works fine with me. We've declared a climate emergency. At the end of the day, all we're really doing is just showing the portion of that that's part of our rates. So in actual fact, we're just getting a little bit more clarity with regards to where the money's going. I appreciated the CE's narrative a while back, it's how we slice the pie. So I've just written down there, so we need to own it. We're not doing anything new, but the narrative will be very, very important in how we talk to it. If we call it a new rate, like I said, people just assume that we're charging them more for doing something. So yes, there is risk there, but if we're going to, the only other time I could think that we'd do this is when we do the coastal plan change. But what fundamentally we're doing here is setting up the pathway as well. And I don't think it's going to necessarily, there may be further future rate increases based on evidence down the track, but any rate increase will more than likely have a portion of it that will end up in here anyway, as such. So it just might be that we build the equation with regards to showing, if that's what our community wants, what we are doing in the climate space, the waste minimalisation space. It's all interconnected and that sort of stuff. And if that's the pathway this council is going to go down, and they've declared a climate emergency, we have declared a climate emergency, so we need to own that. If we don't, that's fine. Then we back out of a climate emergency, and that might be an option to look at as well. I don't know, but I'll be going with option 2 if that's a recommendation.
I really don't want to labour the point, but just in terms of what you were talking about, Janet, about the tangible impact, I mean, if the table is really keen to put another $1 million into that, I mean, I'm all for that, but the reason why originally it was just intended to be a reslicing of the pie was to make sure that it was palatable to get it across the line, and as Marcus said, we crawl, and then we walk, and then we run. So there's the potential to include, you know, in that once we've had the feasibility done, if we end up looking into sort of district-wide renewable electricity generation, how could we channel that through this targeted rate, give transparency to that. So also I think the community can feel, well, we had Evie Dewhurst come and speak with us a little while back about this climate doomism that people are feeling. If they can see that certain amount of money each week that they're able to contribute to this scheme that is helping our community become solar generated, all of our electricity from renewable sources, I mean, that in itself is something that in the future, in the longer term, this, as Martin said, creates the pathway for. So I'm more than happy for more money to be channeled into this rate. But the purpose behind it being just a recalibration of the pie was so that we could hopefully get it across the line initially and add it to the rating system, and then look to, in the future, when we're potentially in less constrained times financially, look at how that could be beefed up. But I don't want to labour the point, and I feel like in terms of making the best use of our time, it seems like maybe there's general contentment around option 2, but I'll leave that to you to decide, Madam Mayor, if you think that's the case.
So I'm seeing a bit of a split, but I'm convinced by what you say. I think providing a vehicle is potentially a useful future-proofing thing to do. That's a benefit that I can see. Liz?
I need to leave the meeting very soon, but just before I go, in summary, my thinking is we need to find ways to make our rating system less regressive by shifting more away from land value towards capital value. I think we need to completely separate that story from what we do with the climate stuff. And my preference would be to use that targeted climate rate for any additional spending we might want to do in that space, rather than shifting current spending into it and have an action plan against it. And so maybe it's not this long-term plan, it's the next one where we do that and we work out, because we're still developing our strategy. But you know, if in our discussions we decide there is a whole bunch more money we need to spend in the space, then by all means have a targeted rate on that. But I don't think we should be shifting across current spending in there. I think it's, and the way to communicate things, I don't think is through the rating system. There's you know, we have other strategies by which we can communicate things to the public about what we're doing in terms of climate change and our response to it. You know, we shouldn't be lumbering that onto the rating system to do our communication jobs for us. So that's where I sit on it.
I hear you, Liz, but what I'm also hearing from Sophie is that this actually provides a vehicle to allocate further funds in the future on the back of our climate think tank. It's not just about communication. For now, it's about a narrative around saying we don't have any plans for any extra spending right now. But what it does is identifies that part of spending, allows us the opportunity to chip away at our capital, our land value, and put a little bit into capital value and provide a vehicle for future. And it's not the first time we've consulted on a vehicle. We had no plans to set up a CCO last long-term plan, but we actually consulted on the concept of one. I see this as a little bit similar to that, maybe.
I guess it's about how quickly you want to have the ability to add more to that spending.
Yeah, so this
do you want to be able to do that within the next, 3 years or so before we do the next long-term
Once
plan?
the rating system's in place, it can be used in annual plans without having to go through another rating review. I think that's the benefit that I would see. And there might be the opportunity to identify other existing spending that we can shift across to help that transition into capital rating as well. So, I'm starting to sway to option 2 myself. Is anybody vehemently opposed to option 2 who would like us to pause work on it?
I need to go.
Or else we'll kind of factor it into our further thinking.
If you do, walk out.
So we'll just finish with Shelley. We'll finish with Shelley, and we're going to skip water rates, and we're going to do them on Thursday because we're over time already. Shelley? Final word from Shelley.
I just think it's a bad look. Our people are gonna think we're increasing rates for something that we've got no plan for. We're just taking money and we've got no action plan around that money. Do we have an action plan? No, we don't. It's not going to go down well.
We're not increasing rates, and we are developing an action plan. What we're doing is creating the vehicle to put work through that plan.
But we know,
and we've got
we're
an
not
action plan.
increasing
Yeah.
rates, but they don't.
Hang on, Chris has something to say here.
Sorry, we've just had a slight conversation along the side here. That money is going towards things we are doing. So you have actually signed up and agreed to do a bunch of things related to climate action, and that is that. It's just we aren't asking for, other than what you've already agreed to do with what we have, we're not saying we need another 150 million. It might be a slight exaggeration in terms of scope and scale, but we're saying for now, we already are doing things. So we're just letting people know that.
So you can actually get more money each time.
Yeah, I think we've covered that. It is, I've only just seen your light go on, Councillor Pravanov, and it is 20 to
Okay,
5.
I'll turn it off.
Thank you. So I think we've got a general idea a little bit. Further conversations, I think we're steering towards option 2 at the moment. And we're going to shift the rest of the slides, the water rate slides, to Thursday so that we can finish up. Thank you for your attendance, everybody. Thanks, Mark.
And Mark, just wanted to say, although it might sound like it was all over the place, it helps us get an understanding for trying to sell this to the community as well when it goes through. So it's important that if we thrash it out, get